All right, so we have officially started a new season, the 2022 Formula Drift Pro Spec season, and have a couple changes this year. First off, I have Joe, Frank, and Colin joining the team this year from 5 Bar Motorsports out of Fort Myers, Florida. I'm really excited to have them on board. They are also mechanics for Joao Barron's team, and so we're kind of all working together this year. So I'm really excited to have them. They are absolutely amazing. And also returning to the team this year is Jeremy, who's going to be doing media. And we also have Fletcher joining the team. He's done one event with me, but this is going to be his first full season on the team. Really pumped about that. And then this year, also have a new spotter. My spotter's name is Paul. Known him for many, many years. We go way back in the Florida drift scene. So I'm really pumped to have him on board the team. So far, everything has gone super well. Everyone gets along so well, and I'm so excited to have these people joining me on this adventure. So, just my luck, round one did not really go to plan. Of course, we had a really weird incident happen when we were lining up for the first practice session. And we had one of the Formula Drift officials coming through and checking to make sure everybody has their safety equipment on, things like that. But one of the things they check on is if we pull the safety pin out of our fire suppression systems. And when he came by my team, I heard one of my crew members saying, did we pull the pin? Did we pull the pin out of the fire suppression system? The FD guy is saying we need to pull the pin out of the fire suppression system. And I'm thinking, oh, well, that's weird. Normally my dad, who is my crew chief, pulls the pin. He's always really good about doing that. And I thought he had done it. To make matters worse, our radios weren't really working properly. Something with the wiring in my radio was not really working. So I couldn't radio back to my dad, who was back at our normal pits. Orlando, we don't have hot pits, so we keep somebody back at normal pits. So he's not there. He's the one that normally pulls the pin. I look back into my back seat and I see the fire bottle and I see a pull tag saying pull before running, and you have to pull this pin for fire suppression to work. And I'm like, that's so weird. Normally he pulls it. So hearing them say we need to pull the pin, can't practice without pulling the pin, without thinking about it, I reach back and I just pull out this pin that has these tags on it. And I set off my fire suppression system. And I was just sitting there in shock, and there's a nozzle like literally right next to me that's like shooting. Fortunately, I have a nice halon system, so it's just shooting out a gas, and like it doesn't make a big mess. But I'm sitting here looking at this. Is this really happening? Is what I think is happening really happening? I was just in complete utter shock, just sitting there staring at it. Meanwhile, like my crew guys are like backing away from the car because they're like choking, they can't breathe. And I don't think I was even breathing. I was just like, are you kidding me? So it turns out, and something that I wasn't really aware of or didn't think to even look at, is we sent off our fire suppression bottle at the beginning of this year to be refilled. We needed it to be refilled, recertified. You want to make sure these things are working properly when you need them, right? So we had sent our bottle off, and what I found out later is instead of sending back our normal bottle, it turns out our bottle also needed to be replaced. So they replaced it with a new bottle that didn't have one nozzle that connects to the fire suppression system, but it actually has two. So if somebody chooses, they can actually run two cables for the fire system. So say one could be in driver's reach and then one could be like outside the car or something, but it allows you to have two pull cables. And if you don't use two pull cables and just use one, you only pull the fire pin out of one side and you leave the pin in the other side. The tags I saw were on the pin that did not need to be pulled. And I wasn't aware that we got a new bottle, so I didn't think to even check if there were two nozzles. I just saw the pin and I went and yanked it. So because my fire suppression system went off, that means I could not practice because it's against the rules. You have to have a fire suppression system to be able to run. So I had to pull out a line and drive back to my pit and figure out what we're gonna do, because having a spare fire suppression bottle is not something we typically have. You know, if your car catches on fire and you have to set off your fire suppression system, there's a good chance you don't need a spare bottle because you're probably not gonna get the car running again to drive again. So at this point, we're running around the pits. We're trying to find anybody that has a spare bottle. I was even going to the pro drivers and saying, hey, does anybody have a bottle I can use out of your car? I'll give it back. It's just now with a new format. This year, we are both practicing and qualifying on Thursday. So last year, we had practice Thursday, we qualified Friday. This year, I had to practice and qualify both on Thursday. So I had to get a fire suppression bottle in my car if I planned on qualifying that night. After running around the pits, nobody had the same brand fire suppression system that I had, and they had different fittings on their bottles. We happened to take a look at, I have a big fire extinguisher in my trailer that I keep in my trailer just in case. And that fire extinguisher had the right size fitting on it. The only problem was the bottle was way bigger than the bottle that was in my car, and it was the regular, squeeze handle to actually get it to expel the gas or, whatever's in it. So we figured, it has the right size fitting. Let's see if we can make it work. So the guys from 5 Bar are sitting here. They are drilling holes through the handles. We're trying to get this thing ratchet strapped into my car. We found a throttle cable to put through the handles. So if I pull the cable, the throttle cable will basically suppress that handle and make it seem like somebody's squeezing it. We get this in the car, and I go over to Kevin Wells, who runs tech, and I basically go up to him, will this work? Well, please. And I explained to him what happened because he went and checked the cable, and I'm like, look, I didn't pull the cable. We were told to pull the pin. I pulled the pin, it set it off. After Kevin took some good look at it, he decided, yes, you're good to go. So we were good. I was able to get in line and practice, and that's where we started our day. A couple hours into practice, time's running out to get to qualifying. So I take my first run, and it's a pretty good run, but my car starts breaking up really bad. But not so much of like a breakup like it's missing, but like it was choking. back to the pits, we check our data logs, and it's really weird that our data logs weren't really reading what they needed to be reading. Something was funny with it because it was showing our lambda 1, lambda 2, which is our AFRs for both banks of the engine. I have 202 sensors, and they were reading a number, but then all of a sudden they would drop to 0 and say 0, like it wasn't getting a reading. So we're like, okay, that's weird. We don't know what's going on. So we try to change some things in the link and go back out there to see if we can get the proper data to see what's going on. So I go out, I take another run. It's choking again. It's running really bad. And it's really weird because the car hasn't done this before. I drove it, a month before. So we come back in and check the data logs, and it's running really rich. For some reason, it's running really rich. It's going past our target AFR range on both banks evenly. So we don't know what's going on. We start pulling spark plugs and checking and regapping spark plugs, and we can't seem to figure out why it's all of a sudden running rich. I decided that I know this track well enough, and I didn't want to hurt the car or the engine. I decided that I didn't want to practice anymore, and I was just going to go out there for a qualifying run.
That's what I'm saying is like, if we go get data, okay, cool, but then when we come back, will we even be able to do anything about it?
I could make the car get around the track. That's all I needed to do. I just needed to put a score on the board. And so I decided I would just sit out until qualifying and run my qualifying lap and just attempt to get a score. And that's what we did. And of course, I missed my shift into 4th gear, but I'm high on the bank. I'm rubbing my rear bumper bash bar on the wall of the bank, but the car is not feeling great. And then when I come into the infield, between inner clip 1 and inner clip 2 is really where I started feeling those breakups, that choking. The car didn't have the power. It didn't want to rev over like 5,800 RPM. It just wasn't there. So I'm, sitting here, just all I can think to myself is keep the car sideways. Just keep the car sideways, get through the track, get a score. So I'm clutch kicking through this final turn, trying to keep it sideways. I know I'm not on a nice outside line where I should be, but I don't care. I kept it sideways through the finish, and I'm like, man, I hope that's not a 0. And fortunately, it was not a 0. I got a score of 60. And I was thinking, oh man, with a score that low, I'm going to end up with that bottom 8. I'm going to have to take a second run. I pull my car back into the hot pits and I park it there. I'm like, we're going to have to take a second run. Might as well stay up here, be prepared. But turns out, got really lucky. There were enough incompletes and lower scores and people that didn't show up to this round that my score of 60 was good enough to get me in the top 32, and I qualified 23rd. And my top 32 battle was going to be against my friend Ben Hobson, who I knew was going to be a really tough one to beat. So going into Friday, our goal was just to get the car running better and see how we do. We changed some things in the Link ECU with the help of the representative from Link, Forrest. And at the end of pro practice, I actually talked to Kevin Wells and was able to get into the burnout box to try to do some testing before it was time for our practice session, because our practice / warm-up wasn't very long. I think it was only about 2 hours. To be honest, I'm not sure. I wasn't really looking at the schedule because we had so much going on with the car. We got in the burnout box at the end of pro practice to test the car, and it seemed to be running better. We weren't running overly rich, it was still a little bit rich, but it wasn't like it was before. That seemed to be okay. So going into practice, I took a lap, it felt a lot better, it sounded a lot better, but every now and then I still felt like there was a little bit of a hiccup and we couldn't figure out why. But at that point, it was running well enough that I'm like, you know what, let me get my practice in and we will go into competition. Heading into top 32 competition, it started pouring. Lightning everywhere. As we're working our way through the top 32, there were multiple pauses for rain delays. We're all standing in the rain. I don't have windows on my car. I just have this little like half window type thing that we made for rain situations, but rain's coming in my passenger seat. I'm like trying to hold my helmet. Passenger seat's getting soaked. I have my crew guys over here getting soaked, trying to hold umbrellas and hang out there with me. And we're sitting on hot grid waiting to go. And I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And we didn't really get any rain practice. And because of that, I decided that I didn't want to do anything drastic setup wise. I didn't want to make any crazy changes. I'm like, you know what, I'll just drive through it. I just figured I would send it. So we finally get out on track for our top 32 battle. And we get a sight lap, and in the sight lap, I'm like, oh, yep, it's pretty much what I thought. You know, it's very, very slick. We have to be really gentle on the throttle. Through the infield, it was like absolute ice, particularly passing that first inner clip. There was a very slick spot. So have our sight lap. I'm feeling okay about it. I'm following first. And in my follow run, Ben was able to get off the line quicker than I was. I definitely did not have enough grip, and he maintained that gap through the bank. And my thought process was, okay, let me try to kind of catch up through the infield through the transition. But coming off the bank by that first inner clip, I hit that slick spot, and at this point I'm just like, oh dear. And you're almost just waiting for the car to come back around. So I hit this slick spot, and he gets a little bit more gap on me. And at this point, I'm just trying to play catch up, trying to keep the car drifting. And towards the end of that lap, as I'm trying to catch up, my car starts doing its like weird little hiccupy thing that I was feeling in practice. So coming towards the finish line, I'm like, oh, let me just keep it sideways. I gave it like a little bit more gas than I probably should have on a wet track, but like I said, I didn't want to straighten out. So I almost over-rotated, or I did over-rotate coming by the finish line. I didn't exactly spin out, but a lot of angle, and then I had to pull out of it, and it was kind of a weird, funny way to kind of end. It was not a great ending. Going into my lead run, I knew that I just needed to focus on what I needed to do and make up some ground on my lead run. And I put down a really good lead run. Normally, I am not that positive about my driving, but I think that my lead run was pretty dang good.
That Ford, again, top one oil, S chassis, and look at it. She's like, okay, I see you. Wow. Let me go ahead. Put my S chassis on the wall. Both of them navigating around that first inner clip, going to the second inner clip. Big angle from Rowlings. Both of them tapping that second inner clip. And Kelsey Rowlings now hops and gains some ground and bring it on home. Wow. That was phenomenal.
I felt so incredibly confident about that lead run. I didn't think it was going to be enough because, you know, my team was telling me, hey, like, he was on you. He was pretty close to you in the rain. In the end, Ben got the win. I'm super pumped for him because his rain driving was absolutely insane. It was really impressive. He did an amazing job. I'm just really happy that throughout all the struggles over the weekend with the fire suppression system going off, the car breaking up like crazy, trying to get it running better, that final lap, that final lead run that I did was something I'm really, really proud of. So overall, it was a crazy event, a great way to break in the new team, but I'm really, really happy with the team and how things went. I think it couldn't have ended any better. Well, I mean, I guess if I had won and moved on and things like that, that would have been better, but it's just, I was really proud of that final lap. So I think going into New Jersey, we're in a really, really good place. I am absolutely loving my team this year. I think that we are going to do some amazing things. So we're just going to try to get this car running right. I'm going to take it down to 5 Bar Motorsports in Fort Myers, put it on the dyno, and see if we can figure out those hiccups and get things worked out for Jersey. Hopefully, everything will go way better next round, and all we can do is our best. So, see you in Jersey. Okay. Let's see if I can wing this. Pull the safety pin and I forgot to say where they're out of. I heard one of my team. It's sounding better. Oh, on the straightaway. So he definitely got. Oof, my butt. Oh my goodness.
It's like the waving inflatable guy. Whee!